Good to see everybody this morning. Hope that, you've survived the time change okay. It's one of those you can't hardly win kind of deals because when we get the hour back, everybody's starving to death before church is over. So what are you going to do? But anyway, it's amazing what the difference an hour makes. I need to say before we begin that neither Joel nor Roger and I consulted on either songs or scripture readings for this morning. Providentially, things have just worked out the way that they have. My class on Sunday morning is the college class, and we're studying the book of Revelation. A couple of weeks ago, we went through chapter 5, and I was thinking that, there's some really good things that I would like to share with the entire church that I hope that will be found useful and maybe even motivating just a little bit. But the idea behind all of this, if you remember, several months ago we did a series on the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, which are chapters 2 and 3. And at that time we made the point that the theme of all of this is to help people understand where God is, what God is doing, how things are going. John is a leader in the church. There is tremendous outside pressure for the first time in the history of the empire. People are required to pledge their allegiance to the emperor before he dies. And part of that deification process was the requirement that all loyal citizens of Rome and friends of Rome would go and offer just a token sacrifice, but also announced that Domitian is Lord. And so that caused some problems. A lot of problems. And there are other problems because there's always problems. John ends up being exiled to a little island, the Isle of Patmos, and while he was there, he doesn't know what's going to happen. He really doesn't even know what's going on. He's out of the loop now. He's been taken out of circulation, so he prays. And the rest of the book is the answer to his prayer. And he's commanded to write what he sees. It's the only book in the Bible where the author is told to write what he sees rather than what he hears. And as these scenes unfold before him, a picture comes into focus. And the picture is one of victory, one of hopefulness. But there are all kinds of things in there that I think that we could really, really, really sink our teeth in, because you have to use your imagination. Now imagine if we had the ability today to reach back to the end of the first century and pluck John off of that Isle of Patmos and bring him into our present day. And we took him down to NASA and let him watch a satellite blast off into space and then tell him to write what he saw using the language that he has and the technology that he's been experienced with. And imagine what you would come up with. Now take that and multiply it by whatever factor you might think is appropriate, and let's take John not to NASA, but let's take him to heaven. And now tell him to write what he sees. And so sorting through this gets a little strenuous sometimes, but you can never take your eye off of the ball. And the ball in the book of Revelation is the throne. It's where all the action is. It's where everything comes out of. And as long as you remember that, you can work your way through the book with relative ease. The book is not about the end of the world as much as it is about the end of the kingdoms of men. It is not about the apocalypse. As a matter of fact, you can't even find it in the book of Revelation. It's not about the Antichrist. The word's not even used in the book of Revelation. You have to read that into the book. The book of Revelation is about the Lamb. That's all it's about. And His victory and what it means in our life. So let's spend a few moments and look at this. And what I want to do is to look at it from the aspect of how we can have contentment and joy and happiness in our life with the Lamb, with the understanding of who and what this Lamb is. So let's begin reading in chapter 5 and verse 1. John says, "Then I saw." Now let me stop here because what Joel read is the setup to this, okay? So if you don't remember what Joel read, then if you find your mind wandering at lunch, not in worship, but at lunch, whip out your Bible and read chapter 4, okay? But anyway, the throne seat, God is on the throne. The elders are bowing down before Him. The four living creatures, they are declaring that He is worthy of worship. And the reason that He is worthy of worship, because three important aspects. Number one, He created the world. Number two, He designed the world. And number three, He holds the whole thing together. It's His world. And so then you see this scene, John in this awestruck reality that is shaping his life dramatically. He says, then I saw in the right hand of the one who was sitting on the throne, there was a scroll. I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one who was sitting on the throne, and there was writing on the inside and the outside, and it was sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel who shouted with a loud voice, who is worthy to break the seals on this scroll and open it? But no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll. Then I began to weep bitterly, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll and to read it. But one of the 24 elders said to me, stop weeping. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the heir to David's throne, has won the victory. And He is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals. And then I saw a lamb that looked as if it had been slaughtered. But it was now standing between the throne and the 4 living beings and among the 24 elders. And it had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which represent the 7-fold Spirit of God that is sent out into every part of the earth. And He stepped forward and He took the scroll from the right hand of the one who was sitting upon the throne. And when He took the scroll, the 4 living beings and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Now each one had a harp, and they held gold bowls that were filled with incense, which are the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song with these words, you are worthy to take the scroll and to break its seals and open it. For you were slaughtered, and your blood has ransomed people for God from every tribe and every language and the people and nation. And you have caused them to become a kingdom of priests for our God, and they will reign upon the earth. And then I looked again, and I heard the voices of thousands and millions of angels around the throne and of the living beings and the elders, and they sang in a mighty chorus, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And then I heard every creature in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and in the sea, and they sang, blessing and honor and glory and power belong to the one sitting on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. And the 4 living beings or creatures said, amen, and the 24 elders, they fell down and they worshiped the Lamb. Wow. That's a big deal. I mean, I don't know if you can kind of visualize the scene, but this is absolutely profound. Because you have the one sitting on the throne, and He is holding this scroll, and it is bound with 7 seals. Just imagine, if you would, these 7 ribbons going around the scroll with wax seals, if you like, on there. And the idea is not that it takes a tremendous amount of strength to break a wax seal. The idea is that when you sent something, a communication from a king to someone else, no one was allowed to look upon that or open it except the one that it was intended for. And so you had no authority. You had no right. And if there was a king somewhere who sent a sealed message to me, and some goober showed up at my door and handed it to me and the seal was broken, I would probably be upset. You had no right to do this. This wasn't your message. It wasn't for you. But the other aspect about this whole deal is that there is a story on this scroll. And what really is happening is we are getting this sense that not only does God hold the future in His hand, there's actually a script that's going to unfold. And it's really the rest of this book as we get into it. John is on the island of Patmos and he wants to know what's going to happen. God's about to show him. When he sees the scroll, he knows that's the thing that he's looking for. And he weeps bitterly because he can't look on it. He can't get an answer. What's going to happen? How is this going to play out? All of these pressures in my life, all of these pressures on your children all across the earth. I mean, we have fired our best shot and the enemy has returned fire and things aren't looking so hot right now. And one of the elders says, hey, don't cry, man. Behold the Lion of Judah. Now that's what we want. We want a lion because lions are spooky. And lions are kings. Lions are strong. So John whips around to see the lion, and it's a lamb. It's just a lamb. How unexpected. I mean, it's a stunning revelation. But it is so consistent. I mean, how many times in the Bible does someone have an encounter with Jesus and they say, you are exactly what I expected you to be? You look just the way I thought you would look. You behave just the way I thought you would behave. I mean, this is what I was looking for. What we find in the Bible over and over again is that God is intent on taking our typical expectations of what His deliverance would look like and turning it on His head. And now we have the whole world in turmoil in John's day because of what one emperor decided to do, and people are going to prison, and churches are falling apart, people are being thrown into prison. John's on the island, and he's ready for his lion, and his lion shows up, and his lion is not only a lamb, it's a lamb that's already been slaughtered. And this is really where the story begins. I mean, we have what we think Jesus ought to be, and how He should look, and what He should do, but it always gets turned on its head. What would you and I think if we were in John's place? We don't need a lamb. We want a lion. We're getting clobbered out here. And sometimes as a follower of Jesus, that's just the way it feels. If I could just make a dent. If I could just make a difference. If there was just a voice or an ear, I wouldn't have to feel like all the time. All I have to do is, or my only choice is just to kind of pull back and separate myself from what's going on in this world and just kind of close my eyes and put my fingers in my ears and start humming na 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 and just wait till it's all over. This is exactly where I believe these people were. And you have to be able to look at this imagery through the lens of the Old Testament. If you don't look in your Old Testament, you're never going to understand the book of Revelation. In the Old Testament, the lamb is mentioned more than any other animal by far. And in almost every instance, the thing gets killed. That's what lambs do. I mean, there's a reason why when you look at high school and college and professional sports, you'll see lions as a mascot. You know, they're powerful. You ain't never going to see a professional football team with a lamb as their mascot. You know, if we were given a franchise in the NFL and we decided what we were going to do is we were going to play as the West Georgia Lambs, it would be worse than what? Scarlet Knights and some of the other bad mascots that are out there. Who wants the lamb? Lambs die. Lambs get killed. Nobody wants to be the Lamb. We want Jesus to be our lion. We want Him to pounce on our enemies. We want Him to make all of our problems go away. We want it to be so emphatic and so loud and so apparent that we can stand up and say, told you so. Told you it's exactly the way it's going to be. Told you shouldn't mess with God. You might think you're tough, but look at me. I've got a lion on my side. But the problem is, He's never again in the book of Revelation referred to as a lion. Never after this. The elder says, John, it's okay. The Lion of Judah is here. And 28 more times in the book of Revelation, Jesus will be referred to as the Lamb. 28. That's a bunch. I think that's significant. I think it's amazing. So the inspiring image of Jesus in Revelation is a lamb. This is one of the reasons why the book really isn't about the enemies of God or about the Antichrist or about the setting up an earthly kingdom for 1,000 years. This is a book about the Lamb and why He is worthy. I mean, after all, He is sharing the throne with the Heavenly Father. What you have, if you look at chapter 4 and chapter 5, you have God on the throne, and then you have the Lamb on the throne, and then you have the Lamb next to the throne, and you have the angels and the 24 elders worshiping the Ancient of Days that sits on the throne, and then you have the same group worshiping the Lamb, and then you have the same group plus 1 million more angels worshiping the Lamb and the Father, both sharing the throne, receiving worship and praise and adoration at the same time. And God the Father doesn't have a problem with that. He doesn't feel like He's losing anything or that He is being showed up. This is a very loud thing, and this is a very spontaneous thing. John says they sang a new song, if you go into the text of what is being said. And just give me a little 40-second aside here. There are 3 aspects about this worship thing. Number 1, they sang new songs. Number 2, it wasn't a cappella. And number 3, it was loud. What are the 3 things we fuss about most? The day is going to come when we are going to be before the Lamb, and we are not going to break our necks to minister to ourselves. We are human and we are flawed, and we bring our own preferences into everything, and we want things the way we want. But let me tell you something. The day is going to come when you're going to stand before the Lamb, and all that's just going to fall away. And all you're going to want to do is fall on your face and bring glory and honor and praise and dignity to the Lamb that was slain. That's the end of my little 40-second aside. Okay, we'll just go on from there. When we get to heaven, nothing's going to be about us. The only thing that we're going to desire to do is to bring glory to God. You have this great multitude, and nothing matters except the Lamb and the one who sits upon the throne. And don't take that so lightly. There are some pretty impressive people in that crowd. You have the blood of the martyrs in that crowd, and nobody's singing praises to them. You have the prophets. You have the patriarchs. You have everybody who did all the heavy lifting and carried the heavy load for all those centuries just so we could be who we are today. And there's not a single person there saying, what about me? When are they going to sing my song? When are they going to bow down to me? You're not even noticed there because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not even about the present struggles. Now, the important application of this is we have this great desire for our lion to come and to put the right people in political office, and for the lion to come and to put our enemies in their place, and for us to be able, from a Christian perspective, use the tools of the world to set forth our agenda. It's not going to work. It has never worked. And the reason is because we don't serve a lion, we serve a lamb. And the only thing that lamb has ever done is to promote the most powerful concept that the world has ever seen, and that is a selfless, giving, loving attitude toward everyone, even those who oppose you. That's it. I mean, that's pretty stinking profound, but that's as complicated as it gets. God doesn't want us to be anything other than those who bring glory to the Lamb in this world, who follow after the footprints of Jesus. Be the ones who take up the cause and move forward. The slain Lamb has won that victory. And the reason that it is the way that it is in Revelation chapter 5 is because He is worthy, because He was slain. He is worthy because He has taken His blood and He has purchased men back to God. He is worthy because He has made us to be a kingdom of priests, people who serve God every single day of our life. And this might come as a great shock to you. But when you read the book of Revelation, one of the things you're going to learn is that Jesus did not win the victory at Armageddon. The victory was won at Calvary. Look at what the Hebrew writer says concerning this in Hebrews chapter 2. Because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could He die, and only by dying could He break the power of the devil who had the power of life. That's where the victory was won. There is no battle of Armageddon. And the reason there's no battle of Armageddon, because when the Lamb shows up, poof, everything else goes away. Because He has already claimed victory over death. And so we don't overcome the world with worldly power, but through the power of the Lamb, a self-giving love. Luke chapter 10, verse 3. Jesus, sending out His disciples, said, "Now remember, boys, that I'm sending you out as lambs among the wolves. Not as lions among the wolves, but as lambs above to the wolves." Okay, so maybe by now we've got the picture. What's the point? There's always got to be a point. Well, there are all kinds of points that we could make. We began our new Wednesday night classes on worship this past week, and we made the point that the very essence of worship is the ability to be satisfied with who God is. Because when we're satisfied with who God is, that's when we glorify Him best. Not satisfied with the things God gives us, but being satisfied with who God is. And if we can understand and grasp just a little about the majesty and the glory and the power and the love and the beauty and the depth of richness and what's really going on just a little bit, then our hearts should become more satisfied, because you got to know what it is you're trying to be satisfied with. And we've set up a system that oftentimes leaves the false notion that if you come join us, then good things will rain on your life, and you'll be able to pick up those Easter eggs, and you'll be able to find the golden one, and everything's going to be better in your life, and you're going to be more successful in your business, and God's going to make you more prosperous, and all these other things that we say. What if it doesn't work out that way? If things don't work out the way that you want them to work out, who's going to praise God? This is the lesson that John is learning on the Isle of Patmos. That even when everything is taken away, there's somebody that has that story in his hand. And there's somebody who can share it. And the Lamb that was killed is victorious in all things. And He lives right here inside of me. Point number 2. If we're going to feel this way about Him when we see Him face to face, why don't we get on with it now? Why do we have to almost act like we have to live different lives between our religious association with the church and with the Bible and with the Savior, and then wait until we die in order to be able to devote ourselves wholly unto Him? You're not going to be satisfied with God until you give yourself wholly to Him. And not only is it the key of being satisfied with God, it is the key to your happiness. Because as long as our happiness is tied with what we think we deserve, and what we think God should do for us, and what we think Jesus should be like, and where He should be, and what He should do, we're not going to be happy. It just isn't going to happen. And if you don't think that's true, just look at the world around you. For centuries, men have tried to find meaning and power and glory and honor for themselves, only to learn that it's vanity. The heart of contentment is the ability to be satisfied with God. The heart of service is the ability to be satisfied with who the Lamb is. The heart of passion, what moves you, what stirs you, what motivates you. And so when we read this chapter, hopefully what we can learn is that the Lion of Judah has won that victory for us as well. And as we cast our eyes upon the Lamb that was slain, we can be content with who God is and content with His ability to keep every promise that He made and to see us through our life, regardless of the circumstances that come along. We know the story, and we know how it ends. We know who wrote it. We know who keeps it. We also know who wins our victory. Let's not be so rude as to insist on the victory being won under the conditions that we set for the God who gave us not only life, but redemption. Be satisfied with who that Lamb is. Happy with the Lamb. We can help you this morning. We ask you to come while we stand and sing.